The September sun streamed through the windows of Roosevelt Middle School, casting long rectangles of light across freshly waxed floors. It was the third week of 7th grade, and for most students, the rhythms of the new school year had already settled into place. Cliques had reformed after summer's brief dissolution, lunchroom territories were quietly understood, and the invisible social map that would guide them through the year was largely drawn. For Marcus Washington, however, the map remained frustratingly blank. "You can put your things in locker 237, said Principal Garcia, her voice kind but hurried as she guided him through the bustling hallway. "Your first class is Mr. Bennett's English, just down that corridor and to the left. The cafeteria is—" "I'll find it," Marcus interrupted, his voice soft but firm. "Thank you." Principal Garcia studied him for a moment, noting the rigid set of his shoulders beneath his crisp navy button-down, the cautious intelligence in his eyes. At 13, Marcus already carried himself with a deliberate dignity that struck her as both admirable and slightly heartbreaking in one so young. "Your transcript from Chicago is excellent," she offered. "I'm sure you'll do very well here." Marcus nodded, his expression carefully neutral. This was his third school in 2 years. His mother's job as a hospital administrator had brought unexpected opportunities, better pay, better title, but each promotion meant uprooting once again. Success had its price, one that Marcus bore without complaint but felt deeply nonetheless. "Thank you," he repeated, gripping his backpack strap a little tighter. "I appreciate the tour." As Principal Garcia walked away, Marcus took a steadying breath. He knew the drill by now. Blend in, work hard, make 1 or 2 solid connections if possible. Don't hope for more. Don't show too much. Find the safe spaces early. The hallway was clearing as students filed into classrooms. Marcus located his locker, worked the combination, and methodically arranged his notebooks and textbooks inside. He kept his movements measured, neither too fast nor too slow. Nothing that would draw attention. Years of being the new kid had taught him the survival value of initial invisibility. But invisibility, Marcus had also learned, was rarely an option for long. "You're my spot." The voice came from behind him, casual but edged with something harder. Marcus turned slowly to find himself facing a tall, broad-shouldered boy with sandy hair and a practiced smirk. 2 others flanked him, their postures mirroring his confidence. "I don't think lockers have assigned spots," Marcus replied evenly, closing his locker door with a soft click. The tall boy's eyebrows raised slightly, his smirk deepening. "New kid's got opinions." He leaned against the locker next to Marcus's. "I'm Tyler. This is Damon and Chris. And this," he gestured to the stretch of hallway they occupied, "is where we hang. Has been since 6th grade. Marcus understood immediately. Every school had its hierarchies, its unwritten rules. He'd stumbled into territory that wasn't his, and now came the test. Would he fold or fight? "I'm Marcus," he offered, keeping his voice neutral. "Just got here from Chicago." "Chicago," echoed Damon, the shorter boy with freckles spread across pale cheeks. "That explains a lot." "Explains what?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. "The attitude," said Tyler, crossing his arms. "You city boys always think you know everything." Marcus felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the tension between standing his ground and the knowledge that confrontation on day 1 would only make everything harder. He'd been here before, navigating this delicate balance in Oakland, in St. Louis, in Chicago. The geography changed, but some dynamics remained stubbornly consistent. "No attitude," Marcus said calmly. "Just trying to find my way to English class." "With Bennett." Chris, the third boy, spoke up. He was leaner than the others, with dark hair falling across calculating eyes. "We're headed there, too. We could show you." Tyler shot Chris a look that Marcus didn't miss, a silent communication that suggested Chris had just offered something that wasn't his to give. "That's okay," Marcus said. "I'll find it." "What's wrong?" Tyler stepped closer. "Don't want our help." Marcus recognized the trap forming. Accept their help and risk whatever initiation they might have planned. refuse, and be labeled arrogant or unfriendly. Before he could respond, the bell rang, its shrill tone filling the corridor. Late on his first day was not how Marcus wanted to start. "I need to go," he said simply, stepping aside. Tyler didn't move. "We're not done talking." "I am." Marcus met his gaze directly, neither challenging nor submissive. A flicker of surprise crossed Tyler's face, quickly replaced by something harder. "You might want to watch that mouth in this school." "Let him go," Chris said suddenly. "Bennett gives detention for late arrivals." Tyler hesitated, then stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. "After you, Chicago." Marcus walked past them, conscious of their eyes on his back, but refusing to hurry his pace. As he turned the corner, he heard low laughter behind him. Mr. Bennett's classroom was halfway down the corridor, its door still open. Marcus slipped in just as the final bell stopped ringing. 28 faces turned toward him, with the unabashed curiosity reserved for novelty in otherwise unchanging environments. "You must be Marcus Washington," Mr. Bennett said from the front of the room. He was younger than Marcus expected, maybe early 30s, with glasses and an easy smile. "Welcome. There's an open seat by the window." Marcus nodded his thanks and made his way to the empty desk. As he sat down, he caught sight of Tyler, Damon, and Chris entering the classroom, their expressions suggesting they deliberately delayed their arrival. Mr. Bennett gave them a pointed look, but said nothing as they took their seats. A girl with curly hair pulled into a high ponytail leaned over from the desk beside his. "I'm Amara," she whispered. "Don't mind the Three Stooges. They think they run this place." "Don't they?" Marcus whispered back, his lips barely moving. Amara's grin was quick and knowing, only because nobody challenges them. Before Marcus could respond, Mr. Bennett called the class to attention and began discussing their current novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. Marcus had already read it at his previous school and felt a small surge of relief. At least he wouldn't be behind academically. "Since we have a new student," Mr. Bennett said, "let's do a quick recap of what we've covered so far. Who can summarize the key themes we've discussed?" Several hands shot up. Mr. Bennett called on a South Asian girl in the front row. "Prejudice and injustice," she answered confidently, "and how people are judged unfairly based on superficial differences." "Good, Priya. What else?" More hands. Marcus kept his down, observing the classroom dynamics, noting who spoke and who didn't, who looked engaged and who seemed disinterested. He noticed Tyler whispering something to Damon, both of them glancing in his direction with smirks. "Marcus," Mr. Bennett said suddenly, "any thoughts from your perspective? Have you read this novel before?" Put on the spot, Marcus straightened slightly. "Yes, sir. At my last school, we focused on moral courage, standing up for what's right even when it's difficult or unpopular." Mr. Bennett nodded appreciatively. "Excellent point. Atticus Finch's decision to defend Tom Robinson despite community pressure exemplifies that moral courage. Let's explore that further today." As Mr. Bennett turned to write on the whiteboard, Marcus felt the weight of Tyler's stare from across the room. He didn't need to look to know the expression it held. He'd seen it too many times before. The assessment of a potential target, the calculation of weaknesses, the measuring of boundaries. The lesson proceeded with a discussion of Chapter 15, where a mob comes to the jail intending to lynch Tom Robinson. Marcus listened attentively, noting the parallels between the fictional town of Macomb and places he'd lived, the unspoken rules, the entrenched hierarchies, the consequences of being perceived as different or threatening. When the bell rang signaling the end of class, Marcus gathered his materials efficiently, planning his exit strategy. He needed to find his next class without another encounter with Tyler and his friends. Sometimes avoidance was the smartest tactical move, at least until he better understood the landscape. "What's your next class?" Amara asked, falling into step beside him. "Pre-algebra with Miss Chun." "Me too." Her smile was genuine, lacking the calculation he'd grown so accustomed to detecting. "Come on, I'll show you a shortcut." As they left the classroom, Marcus caught sight of Tyler watching them, his expression unreadable. Whatever was coming, Marcus knew it wasn't over. The question wasn't if there would be a confrontation, but when, and on whose terms it would unfold. For now, though, he had math class to find and a potential ally by his side. In the complex ecosystem of middle school, that counted as a promising start. The rest of Marcus's first day unfolded in a blur of new faces, classroom layouts, and the subtle social choreography of a school where everyone but him knew the steps. By lunch period, his carefully maintained composure was beginning to fray at the edges. The cafeteria sprawled before him, a cacophony of voices bouncing off institutional walls. Marcus stood at its entrance, tray in hand, taking in the invisible boundaries that divided the space. Athletes clustered near the windows, drama kids by the stage doors, honor students near the front, and various other social groupings that would take weeks to fully map. "Over here," called Amara, waving from a table in the middle section. Beside her sat Priya from English class, and two boys Marcus hadn't met. Relief washed over him as he navigated toward them, aware of the eyes tracking his movement across the room. He'd learned early that these first public affiliations would define him in the school's social hierarchy. "Guys, this is Marcus from Chicago," Amara announced as he set his tray down. "Marcus, meet Jaden, Eli, and you already know Priya." Jaden, lanky with close-cropped hair and wire-rimmed glasses, offered a fist bump. "Chicago. White Sox or Cubs?" "Sox," Marcus replied, returning the gesture. "South Side." "Respect." Jaden nodded appreciatively. "My cousin lives in Bronzeville. I visit every summer." The conversation flowed easily after that, with questions about Chicago, comparisons to their smaller suburban community, discussions about teachers to avoid and which extracurriculars were worth joining. For 20 minutes, Marcus allowed himself to relax, to feel the possibility of belonging, a feeling he'd learned to approach with careful skepticism. "Heads up," Eli murmured suddenly, his eyes fixed on something over Marcus's shoulder. "Trouble at 3 o'clock." Marcus didn't turn, but he felt a shift in the atmosphere, the subtle tensing of his new acquaintances. A moment later, a tray clattered onto the table beside him, and Tyler dropped into the empty seat. "Making friends already, Chicago?" Tyler's voice carried just enough for nearby tables to hear. Damon and Chris positioned themselves behind him, creating a tableau that Marcus recognized from school's past. The public challenge, the audience gathering, the test of the new kid's place in the order of things. "That's generally how it works," Marcus replied evenly, continuing to eat his lunch. Tyler's smirk widened. "Funny. I noticed you're pretty comfortable speaking up in Bennett's class, trying to show everyone how smart Chicago schools made you." Marcus met his gaze directly, just answering a question. "You know what I think." Tyler leaned in closer. "I think you're trying too hard to impress everyone, coming in here with your fancy clothes and your big city attitude." Marcus glanced down at his simple button-down and jeans, clothes his mother had insisted were appropriate for a first day. Nothing fancy, nothing that should draw attention. But he understood. It wasn't about the clothes. It was about finding any difference to target. "Leave him alone, Tyler," Amara said, her voice steady but tense. "Don't you have something better to do?" Tyler's eyes never left Marcus. "I'm just being friendly, getting to know our new classmate, especially since he's sitting with my ex." The subtle current of history flowed beneath the words. Marcus registered the flush across Amara's cheeks, the way Jaden and Eli exchanged glances, the ripple of attention from surrounding tables. Complex waters to navigate on day one. "I didn't know," Marcus said simply. "I'm just sitting with people who were kind enough to make room." "Kind," Tyler repeated, drawing out the word. "That's one way to put it. Amar's real good at collecting strays." The barb landed precisely where intended. Marcus felt the familiar heat rising in his chest, the pressure to respond, to establish boundaries. But experience had taught him that cafeterias, with their audience and authority figures, were dangerous grounds for confrontation. "I appreciate good people," Marcus said, his tone neutral but firm. "Turns out they're not hard to find." A subtle shift rippled through the onlookers. Someone at a nearby table whispered, others leaned forward slightly. The exchange was being evaluated, weighed, remembered. Tyler's smile tightened. "You know what I heard about Chicago public schools? That the standards are so low, anyone can look smart there." "Tyler," Priya interjected. Seriously, drop it. I'm just making conversation, Tyler insisted. I still locked on Marcus. I'm curious about all the things Chicago boy here has to teach us small-town folk. Marcus set down his fork deliberately. I'm not teaching anything. Just trying to eat lunch. See, that's what I mean, Tyler pressed. That attitude. Like you're too good to talk to us. The trap was familiar. Respond with anger and be labeled the aggressive new kid. Back down completely and become an established target. Marcus had navigated this delicate balance in 3 schools before, learning painful lessons each time. I'm happy to talk, Marcus said, keeping his voice measured. But if you're looking for some kind of confrontation, I'm not interested. Confrontation? Tyler feigned surprise. Why would you think that? Unless that's how you handled things in Chicago. I hear it's pretty rough there. The implication hung in the air, heavy with unspoken stereotypes. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, a physical manifestation of the tension between reacting and restraining. Jaden shifted uncomfortably. Man, let it go. He's new, and I'm trying to help him understand how things work here. Tyler countered, never breaking eye contact with Marcus. Simple stuff, really. Like respecting established territories. The pause was deliberate, the message clear. You're encroaching where you don't belong, with people who aren't yours to claim. Marcus had spent years developing the ability to read these coded communications, to understand the subtext beneath seemingly casual exchanges. He'd also learned that sometimes the wisest response was the most unexpected one. He smiled, not a challenging smirk or a nervous gesture, but a genuine smile that reached his eyes. I appreciate the concern, but I think I'll figure it out as I go. That's worked for me so far. The response visibly threw Tyler, who'd clearly been anticipating either escalation or submission. This calm self-assurance didn't fit the script he'd prepared for. Whatever, he finally said, standing abruptly. Just remember what I said about territories. Some lessons are harder than others. As Tyler and his friends moved away, the tension at the table slowly dissipated. Conversations around them resumed. The momentary drama concluded for now. Sorry about that, Amara said quietly. Tyler's been worse since we broke up last spring. You don't need to apologize for him, Marcus replied, returning to his lunch though his appetite had diminished. Not your responsibility. He shouldn't have said that stuff about Chicago, Jaden added, his expression troubled. That was messed up. Marcus shrugged, a practiced gesture of dismissal he'd perfected over years. I've heard worse. Still, Priya insisted, it wasn't right. No, Marcus agreed. It wasn't, but it also wasn't surprising. He met their concerned gazes. Look, I've been the new kid before. This isn't my first rodeo with guys like Tyler. What happened at your other schools? Eli asked, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. Marcus considered the question, weighing how much to share. Different things in different places. In Oakland, I kept my head down until I didn't have to anymore. In St. Louis, I made friends with the wrong crowd first. Had to work my way out. In Chicago. He paused, remembering. In Chicago, I found my people early. Made everything easier. A weighted silence followed, the 4 of them processing what Marcus had revealed, not just about his past, but about the nature of his present situation. He was experienced in being an outsider, in navigating hostile territory, in the complex calculus of finding belonging. Well, Amara said finally, her voice warm with decision, looks like you found your people early here, too. Something loosened in Marcus's chest, a knot of tension he'd been carrying since walking through Roosevelt Middle School's doors that morning. He knew better than to fully trust the feeling. First-day alliances were fragile things. But it was a start, a foothold in unfamiliar terrain. Maybe I did, he acknowledged with a hint of a smile. The rest of the lunch period passed in lighter conversation, but Marcus remained aware of Tyler, watching from across the cafeteria, whispering to his expanding circle. The challenge had been issued and incompletely resolved, a situation Marcus knew wouldn't remain static for long. His suspicion proved correct in 7th period gym class. The boys' locker room pulsed with chaotic energy. shouts and laughter bouncing off metal lockers as adolescents changed into identical gray t-shirts and navy shorts. Marcus found an empty corner, changing quickly with the efficiency of someone who preferred minimal exposure. Washington. The booming voice of Coach Ramirez cut through the noise. Marcus looked up to see the stocky man beckoning him over, clipboard in hand. "You played basketball at your last school?" Coach asked, consulting what must have been Marcus's transfer records. "Yes, sir. JV team." "Good. We can use some height." Coach made notation. "Today we're doing fitness assessments. Pair up with someone for the strength stations." Marcus turned to find himself face to face with Tyler, who had materialized silently behind him. "Looks like we're partners, Chicago," Tyler said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Lucky you." Coach Ramirez had already moved on to address another student. Marcus recognized the deliberate timing. Tyler had ensured there was no opportunity to select a different partner. "Looking forward to it," Marcus replied with deliberate neutrality. The gymnasium was set up with various stations, pull-up bars, push-up mats, medicine balls for core exercises. Boys paired off, one performing exercises while the other counted and spotted. "You first," Tyler said as they reached the pull-up station, gesturing toward the bar with exaggerated courtesy. Marcus stepped up, jumped to grip the bar, and began performing pull-ups with steady, controlled movements. Years of basketball training had built significant upper body strength, and he completed 12 reps before dropping lightly to his feet. "Your turn," he said, stepping aside. Tyler approached the bar with visible confidence, completing 10 pull-ups before dropping down, his breathing slightly labored, but his expression revealing nothing. "Not bad for a city boy," he remarked, making a show of recording Marcus's number on their shared assessment sheet. They moved through the stations with similar results, Marcus performing slightly better on some exercises, Tyler on others, neither acknowledging the unspoken competition that hummed between them. It was at the medicine ball station that the tension finally crystallized into something more overt. "Core rotations," Tyler explained with casual authority. "I'll throw, you catch and twist. 10 reps each side." Marcus nodded, positioning himself 6 feet away. Tyler hefted the 10-pound medicine ball, then threw it with unexpected force directly at Marcus's midsection. Marcus caught it, the impact harder than necessary, but not enough to knock him off balance. "Sorry," Tyler said with mock concern. "Didn't realize my own strength." Marcus completed the rotation and threw the ball back with precise control, firm enough to demonstrate capability, measured enough to avoid escalation. The exchange continued, each throw from Tyler coming with increasing force and less predictable timing. Marcus maintained his composure, adapting to the irregular rhythm, refusing to show discomfort when catches landed hard against his ribs or abdomen. "You've got good hands," Tyler commented, voice casual as he prepared for another throw. "Must be all that practice dodging bullets in Chicago." The ball left his hands before Marcus could process the deliberate provocation. A heavy projectile hurled at his face rather than his core. Pure reflex took over. Marcus sidestepped, catching the ball with one hand mere inches from his nose. The gym fell momentarily silent, several nearby pairs pausing their exercises to watch. Marcus stood perfectly still, the medicine ball gripped tightly in his hand, his expression carefully composed despite the rush of adrenaline and anger surging through him. The taunt about Chicago violence had been calculated, as had the dangerous throw, a dual attempt to provoke him into either flinching or retaliating. Coach Ramirez's whistle cut through the tense silence. "What's going on over there?" "Nothing, Coach," Tyler called back, his tone innocent. "Just working on our reflexes." Coach eyed them skeptically, but turned his attention to students at another station. Tyler's gaze returned to Marcus, challenging and evaluating. With deliberate calm, Marcus stepped forward and handed the medicine ball directly to Tyler, close enough that only Tyler could hear his next words. "I know what you're doing," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady and low. "It won't work." Something flickered in Tyler's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or recalculation. "We'll see about that," he replied, equally soft. "Day's not over yet." The rest of the period passed without further incident, but Marcus remained hyper-aware of Tyler's presence, of the watchful eyes of other students, of the narrative being constructed around him in whispers and glances. By the final bell, the weight of sustained vigilance had settled into his shoulders like a physical burden. As students streamed toward buses and waiting cars, Marcus walked deliberately toward the bike rack where he'd secured his second-hand Schwinn that morning. His mother wouldn't be able to pick him up until after his shift ended at 5, and the 3-mile ride home would give him time to decompress, to process the complex social landscape he'd have to navigate in the coming days. He was unlocking his bike when he felt rather than saw the presence behind him. Marcus turned slowly, unsurprised to find Tyler flanked by Damon, Chris, and 2 older boys he didn't recognize, larger, with the developed musculature of high school athletes. "Thought we'd walk you out," Tyler said, his tone conversational though the configuration of bodies told a different story. They had positioned themselves in a loose semicircle, cutting off easy escape routes. Marcus straightened, bike lock still in hand. "I'm good, thanks." "Don't be like that." Tyler stepped closer. "We're just being neighborly, making sure the new kid feels welcome." The older boys exchanged glances, smirking. Marcus assessed the situation rapidly. They were on the side of the school away from the main exit, partly obscured by the equipment shed. Most teachers would be supervising the bus loading area on the opposite side, and the flow of students had already thinned to stragglers. Not an ideal scenario, but also not unexpected. New schools always carried this risk: the testing, the territorial posturing, the establishment of hierarchies. Marcus had hoped to delay this particular confrontation until he'd built stronger alliances, but he'd also prepared for its inevitability. "I appreciate the thought," Marcus said evenly, "but I need to get home." "What's the rush?" asked one of the older boys, shifting to block Marcus's path to the street. "We just want to get to know Tyler's new friend better." "We're not friends," Marcus corrected, his gaze steady on Tyler. "Not yet," Tyler agreed with a cold smile. "But we could be, if you understand how things work around here." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the school grounds as Marcus stood surrounded, the weight of the moment settling heavy on his shoulders. In this tableau of teenage power dynamics, he recognized a scene that had played out countless times across America's schoolyards: the targeted isolation of difference, the enforcement of unwritten hierarchies. "Let me break it down for you," Tyler continued, stepping closer. His voice carried the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to control. "Roosevelt has a certain way things work. New kids, especially ones who don't know their place, need guidance." Marcus remained still, his posture neither aggressive nor submissive. Years of navigating similar confrontations had taught him that body language communicated as much as words in these moments. "And you're offering this guidance out of the goodness of your heart." A ripple of laughter moved through Tyler's friends. Damon, the shortest of the group, but with shoulders like a linebacker, stepped forward. "You think you're pretty smart, don't you? Showing off in Bennett's class, cozying up to Amar's crew, acting like you belong here after one day." "I'm just trying to get through school like everyone else," Marcus replied, his voice calm despite the rapid calculations running through his mind. Distance to potential exits, witnesses who might still be nearby, the likelihood of faculty intervention. "See, that's your first mistake," Tyler said, his tone shifting from mock friendliness to something harder. "You're not like everyone else. You're the outsider here, and outsiders need to understand their position." One of the older boys moved to Marcus's left, subtly cutting off the path between the bike rack and the nearest building entrance. The message was clear. This confrontation would not be avoided through simple departure. "What position would that be?" Marcus asked, maintaining eye contact with Tyler while remaining acutely aware of the other's movements. "At the bottom," Tyler replied simply. "Keep your head down, stay away from Amara and her friends, don't show off in class, and maybe, we'll leave you alone." Marcus felt a familiar heat rising in his chest, the indignation at being told to diminish himself, to accept limitations imposed by others' insecurities. He'd faced this demand before, in Oakland when a group of 8th graders told him not to join the debate team because that's not for boys like you. In St. Louis, when the honors math teacher expressed surprise at his test scores. In Chicago, when the basketball captain suggested he tone it down during practice. Each time, the request had been the same. Be less, want less, expect less. Make yourself smaller so others can feel bigger. That's not going to work for me, Marcus said quietly. A tense silence followed his words. Tyler's expression hardened, his previous pretense of casual conversation abandoned. Then we have a problem, he stated flatly. Because I'm not having some Chicago transfer coming in here, taking up space that isn't his. The phrase taking up space resonated in Marcus's mind, echoing conversations he'd had with his mother about belonging, about dignity, about the right to exist fully in the world. The space belongs to whoever claims it, Marcus responded, a statement both simple and profound in its rejection of imposed boundaries. Tyler's face flushed with anger. Is that what they taught you in Chicago? To walk into places that aren't yours and just claim them? No, Marcus replied, his voice steady. My mother taught me that. She said nobody gets to tell you where you belong or how much space you're allowed to take up. That's something you decide for yourself. Something shifted in the atmosphere, not just in Tyler's expression of momentary confusion, but in the subtle reactions of the others. Chris, standing slightly behind Tyler, glanced away, his posture suggesting discomfort. One of the older boys exchanged a look with Damon, a silent question passing between them. Your mother should worry less about philosophy and more about teaching you how things actually work, Tyler said, recovering his composure. Because in the real world, you don't just decide where you belong. Others decide that for you. Marcus felt a calm clarity settling over him, the kind that came when boundaries were not just tested but violated. That might be how it works in your world, not in mine. Tyler stepped closer, the distance between them narrowing to less than arm's length. Your world doesn't exist here. You're in my school now. It's everyone's school, came a voice from behind the group. All heads turned to find Jaden standing there, Eli beside him. They had approached silently from the direction of the football field, their presence unexpected and immediately significant, not just as potential allies for Marcus, but as witnesses to whatever might unfold next. This isn't your business, Martinez, Tyler said, his attention momentarily diverted. 5 against 1 makes it everyone's business, Jaden replied, his voice calm but firm as he moved to stand beside Marcus. Eli followed, positioning himself on Marcus's other side. The configuration had shifted. 3 facing 5, still outnumbered but no longer isolated. Marcus felt a surge of emotion at this unexpected solidarity, this concrete demonstration that perhaps, in this new place, he wasn't as alone as he had feared. We were just having a conversation, Tyler said, his tone defensive now, explaining how things work around here. Looked more like intimidation from where we were standing, Eli observed quietly. Tyler's face darkened. Nobody asked for your opinion, Chen. Nobody asked for yours either, Marcus interjected, his confidence bolstered by the presence of allies. Yet here you are, offering it freely. The older boys exchanged glances again, a new calculation visible in their expressions. What had begun as a simple intimidation of a new student had evolved into something more complicated, with unexpected participants and witnesses. This isn't over, Tyler said finally, taking a step back. Not even close. It could be, Marcus suggested, surprising everyone, including himself. It doesn't have to be like this. Tyler laughed, the sound harsh and the afternoon quiet. What, you want to be friends now? After all that talk about claiming space? Not friends, Marcus clarified. Just not enemies. There's enough room in this school for all of us without this performance. The word performance landed precisely as Marcus had intended, highlighting the constructed nature of Tyler's dominance display, the unnecessary theater of intimidation. For a brief moment, something unguarded flashed across Tyler's face, a glimpse of uncertainty or perhaps recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by the practiced mask of teenage bravado. Whatever, he muttered, backing away. Let's go, he added to his group. This is boring me. As they retreated across the schoolyard, the tension gradually dissipated. Marcus turned to Jaden and Eli, the gratitude he felt momentarily overwhelming his ability to express it. "Thanks," he finally managed. "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, we did," Jaden said simply. "That's what you do when you see something wrong happening." "How did you know?" Marcus asked, securing his bike lock in his backpack. Eli shrugged. "Amara texted me that Tyler was looking for you after school. Wasn't hard to figure out what that meant." The mention of Amara's name registered with Marcus, her absence notable, her concern expressed through proxy. Another complexity in the social web he was still learning to navigate. "Does this happen a lot?" he asked, gesturing toward Tyler's retreating figure. "Tyler being a jerk?" "Yeah," Jaden confirmed. "This level of confrontation? Not so much. You've definitely gotten under his skin." "I wasn't trying to," Marcus said honestly. "That might be exactly why," Eli suggested thoughtfully. "You didn't play your role in his script. Didn't back down. Didn't blow up. Just stood your ground." Marcus considered this as they walked toward the street, rolling his bike alongside them. He hadn't been trying to challenge Tyler. Had, in fact, been following his usual strategy of minimal confrontation. But perhaps that very refusal to engage on Tyler's terms had constituted its own form of resistance. "Will this make things worse?" he asked, the question both practical and profound. Jaden and Eli exchanged looks before Jaden answered. "Hard to say. Tyler doesn't like being challenged, especially not in front of his high school buddies. But he also doesn't like prolonged conflicts that draw teacher attention. He prefers subtler methods," Eli added. "Social isolation, rumors, that kind of thing." Marcus nodded, familiar with the tactics from school's past. "Good to know." They reached the intersection where their paths would diverge. Jaden and Eli headed toward the nearby subdivision where they lived, Marcus toward the apartment complex on the other side of the commercial district. "You good from here?" Jaden asked. "Yeah," Marcus confirmed, mounting his bike. "Thanks again. We've got basketball tryouts next week," Jaden mentioned as Marcus prepared to ride away. "Coach was already interested after seeing your Chicago records, but after today, he'll definitely want you there." The casual invitation carried weight beyond its surface meaning, an acknowledgement of Marcus's athletic ability. Yes, but also an extension of belonging, a connection to the structured social world of school sports. "I'll be there," Marcus promised. As he pedaled away, the events of the day replayed in his mind. The initial encounter at his locker, the classroom dynamics, lunch with Amara and her friends, the confrontation in gym class, and finally, the standoff after school. So much navigated in a single day. So many potential alliances and conflicts set in motion. His phone buzzed in his pocket. At the next intersection, Marcus paused to check it, finding a text from an unknown number. "This is Amara. Got your hashtag from Jaden. Sorry about Tyler. You okay?" The simple message carried layers of meaning, concern, connection, and an implicit recognition of what he'd experienced. Marcus typed back, "I'm fine. Thanks for the warning." 3 dots appeared immediately, followed by, "Some of us are meeting at Riverfront Park Saturday. 2 p.m., you should come." Marcus smiled, the invitation warming something in his chest that had been cold with caution. "I'll be there," he replied, echoing his response to Jaden's basketball invitation. As he continued his ride home, the weight of the day's confrontations gradually lifted, replaced by a cautious optimism. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Tyler's warning that this isn't over would certainly prove true in the days ahead. But for the first time since arriving in this new town, Marcus felt the possibility of genuine connection, of finding people who would stand beside him rather than demand he diminish himself. The afternoon sun cast a shadow long across the pavement as he pedaled, a shadow that seemed, to Marcus's eyes, to take up exactly the space it was meant to occupy. No more, no less, but precisely enough. When he arrived home, his mother was still at work. The apartment felt empty, but not lonely as Marcus prepared a snack and settled at the kitchen table with his homework. The routine was familiar, new town, new school, but the same diligent focus on academics that had been his constant companion through each transition. As he worked through Mr. Bennett's questions about To Kill a Mockingbird, his mind kept returning to the confrontation with Tyler, to the moment when Jaden and Eli had appeared like unexpected allies in a story he thought he'd have to navigate alone. Perhaps that was the most significant revelation of the day, that in this new chapter, the narrative might unfold differently than he had anticipated. That here, in this unfamiliar place, Marcus Washington might not have to stand alone. The days that followed Marcus's first confrontation with Tyler settled into a tense rhythm of careful navigation. In the hallways, Tyler and his friends maintained a deliberate distance, their hostility expressed through cold stares rather than direct confrontation. The incident at the bike rack had shifted something in the school's social ecosystem. No longer was Marcus simply the new kid, but someone who had stood his ground, who had allies, who couldn't be easily isolated. In English class, Marcus found himself increasingly engaged with the discussions of To Kill a Mockingbird, drawing parallels between Macomb's social structures and the invisible hierarchies of Roosevelt Middle School. Mr. Bennett noticed his insights, often calling on him to expand on his observations about justice, courage, and the cost of standing up against established systems. "There's something powerful about Scout's perspective," Marcus offered during Friday's class discussion. "She sees the injustice clearly because she hasn't learned all the rules adults use to justify it. Sometimes not knowing how things are supposed to be lets you see how they actually are." Mr. Bennett leaned against his desk, considering Marcus's words. "That's an astute observation. Do you think there's value in being an outsider, then? In seeing communities with fresh eyes?" The question hung in the air, personal in ways Mr. Bennett couldn't fully understand. Marcus felt the weight of his classmates' attention, including Tyler's measured gaze from the back row. "I think," Marcus began carefully, "outsiders can see patterns that insiders take for granted, but understanding why those patterns exist, that takes time and connection. You need both perspectives." "Both perspectives," Mr. Bennett repeated thoughtfully. "The clarity of distance and the depth of belonging." "Well put, Marcus." The moment lingered as something significant. Not just academic praise, but recognition of a deeper truth Marcus was living daily in his new environment. From across the room, he caught Amara's smile, a silent acknowledgement of shared understanding. By Saturday afternoon, when Marcus pedaled his bike to Riverfront Park, the events of his first week had crystallized into something approaching clarity. He still moved through Roosevelt's hallways with careful attention, still noted Tyler's calculating presence, still measured his words in certain spaces, but he no longer felt like a mere visitor in hostile territory. The park sprawled along the town's central river, a winding band of green that connected disparate neighborhoods. Marcus found Amara and her friends at a cluster of picnic tables near the basketball courts, where a casual game was already underway. "You made it," Amara called, waving him over. Besides Jaden, Eli, and Priya, several other students Marcus recognized from his classes were present, the group larger and more diverse than he had anticipated. "Wouldn't miss it," Marcus replied, securing his bike to a nearby rack. "We're about to start teams for basketball," Jaden explained, nodding toward the courts. "You in?" Marcus nodded, the familiar anticipation of competition settling comfortably in his chest. On the basketball court, at least, he knew exactly where he stood, his skills measurable, his contributions quantifiable, his presence unquestionable. As teams formed and the game began, Marcus found himself settling into the rhythms of play with unexpected ease. These were his teammates from Chicago, with whom he developed intuitive connections over months of practice. But there was something immediately familiar in the language of the game, the nonverbal cues, the shared understanding of space and movement, the mutual respect that emerged from competitive effort. Midway through the second game, as Marcus executed a perfect assist to Jaden for a three-pointer, he caught sight of familiar figures at the edge of the court, Tyler, Damon, and several others, watching with undisguised interest. "Heads up," Eli murmured as they jogged back for defense. "We've got an audience." Marcus nodded, maintaining his focus on the game, while remaining aware of the potential implications of Tyler's presence. This public space was different from the isolated schoolyard. More witnesses, more freedom of movement, less institutional constraint. Whatever happened here would follow different rules. When the game concluded with Marcus's team winning by 7 points, Tyler and his group approached the courts. The tension was immediate, conversations around them quieting as other park-goers sensed the potential for conflict. "Nice game," Tyler said, his tone carefully neutral as he addressed the group rather than Marcus directly. "Mind if we play winners?" The request, reasonable on its surface, loaded with subtext underneath, hung in the air as Marcus's teammates exchanged glances. "Sure," Jaden answered finally, stepping forward as the team's unofficial captain. 5-on-5. Tyler nodded, his gaze shifting to Marcus with the barest hint of challenge. "Unless Chicago's too tired." "I'm good," Marcus replied evenly. "Ready when you are." What followed wasn't just a basketball game but an elaborate negotiation of respect, territory, and social standing, played out through bounce passes and defensive positions rather than words. Tyler proved to be a competent player, quick, strategic, with a solid mid-range jumper that kept his team competitive through the first half of the game. But it was on defense that the subtext of their ongoing conflict emerged most clearly. Each time Marcus drove toward the basket, Tyler was there, bodying him with controlled aggression that straddled the line between competitive play and personal challenge. Each screen, each contested rebound became a physical conversation about boundaries and dominance. Marcus responded not by escalating but by adapting, using Tyler's aggressive defense against him with pump fakes and misdirection, creating space where none seemed to exist, finding teammates for assists when his own path was blocked. It was basketball as communication, as problem-solving, as demonstration of character. Midway through the game, during a particularly intense sequence, Tyler blocked Marcus's shot attempt with enough force to send the ball flying off-court. As Marcus jogged to retrieve it, Tyler followed. "You think you're proving something?" Tyler asked quietly, his voice pitched below the ambient noise of the game. Marcus picked up the ball, considering his response. "I'm just playing basketball." "This isn't just about basketball," Tyler countered. "This is about you coming into my school, my town, acting like you belong here." Marcus took a measured breath, the ball solid and familiar in his hands. "Why does my belonging threaten yours? There's room for both of us." The question seemed to catch Tyler off guard, complexities flickering across his expression before the defensive mask returned. "That's not how it works." "Says who?" Marcus challenged gently. "Who made that rule?" Before Tyler could respond, Jaden called from the court. "Ballin'? We're waiting." The moment of private conversation broken, they returned to the game, but something had shifted. A question planted where previously only assertions had existed. Marcus noted subtle changes in Tyler's play. Less performative aggression, more focused competition, as if the game itself had become the primary concern rather than the social dynamics it represented. When the final point was scored, a clean three-pointer from Marcus that sealed his team's narrow victory, the expected tension of winner and loser dissolved into something more nuanced. Players from both sides offered tired high-fives, compliments on good plays, the universal rituals of athletic respect transcending, however temporarily, the social divisions that had brought them to this confrontation. "Good game," Marcus offered, extending his hand to Tyler. A moment of hesitation, then Tyler took it, a brief, firm handshake that acknowledged skill if not friendship. "You're not bad," he conceded, adding after a pause. "For a city kid." The qualifier hung between them, part lingering hostility, part reluctant recognition, part tentative attempt at humor. Marcus accepted it as the complex communication it was. "You're not bad yourself," he replied, "for a small-town kid." The ghost of a smile touched Tyler's mouth before he turned away, rejoining his friends who were already moving toward the water fountains. The encounter had reached no neat resolution, no dramatic transformation, just a small shift in the foundation of their interaction, a hairline crack in the wall of hostility Tyler had constructed. As the afternoon continued, the larger group fragmented into smaller conversations across picnic tables and benches. Marcus found himself sitting with Amara, Priya, and several others he was still getting to know, the talk flowing easily from school to music to plans for the upcoming fall festival. "So what's Chicago like really?" asked Lisa, a quiet girl from his math class. "Tyler makes it sound like some kind of war zone." Marcus smiled wryly. "Parts of it are tough, sure, But mostly it's just people living their lives, like anywhere else. My neighborhood had community gardens, weekend basketball tournaments, the best tamales you've ever tasted from Ms. Gonzalez's kitchen. You miss it, Amara observed. Not a question, but a recognition. I miss parts of it, Marcus acknowledged. The friends I made, the places I knew. But that's how it goes when you move a lot. You learn to carry the important parts with you. How many times have you moved? Priya asked. For schools in 3 years, Marcus answered. My mom's job keeps advancing, which is great for her career, but means we relocate a lot. The revelation sparked a round of sympathetic responses, questions about his previous homes, expressions of admiration for his adaptability. In sharing this piece of his history, Marcus felt something loosen within him. The careful guard he maintained around his experiences, the protective distance he typically kept between himself and new acquaintances. That explains a lot, Jaden commented, joining their circle. About how you handled Tyler, I mean. You've had practice. Marcus nodded, acknowledging the insight. Every school has its Tyler. Different names, same dynamic. And you always stand up to them. Lisa asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Not always, Marcus admitted. In Oakland, I kept my head down too long, became invisible. In St. Louis, I tried fitting in with the wrong crowd first, thought that would make things easier. By Chicago, I'd learned it's better to be myself from day one, even if that makes things harder at first. Being yourself made things harder here, Amara pointed out. Tyler wouldn't have targeted you if you'd played small. Maybe, Marcus conceded. But then I wouldn't have met you all either. Playing small might avoid conflict, but it also avoids connection. His words settled into a thoughtful silence, each of them considering the broader implications, not just for Marcus's situation, but for their own choices about visibility, authenticity, and the courage to claim space. My grandmother says something similar, Priya offered after a moment. She came from India in the 70s, faced all kinds of discrimination. She always tells me, shrinking yourself doesn't make prejudice disappear. It just teaches people their right to expect you to shrink. Marcus nodded, recognition flowing through him. Your grandmother sounds wise. Stubborn is what my dad calls her. Priya laughed. But yeah, wise too. The conversation continued as afternoon stretched toward evening, topics weaving between the personal and philosophical. Marcus found himself speaking more openly than he had in months, perhaps years, about the challenges of constant relocation, about his mother's determination to advance in her career despite the obstacles, about his own evolving understanding of what it meant to belong in spaces not designed with him in mind. As the group eventually gathered their things, making plans to meet for movies the following weekend, Marcus felt the tentative structures of friendship forming around him. Not the shallow connections of convenience he'd sometimes settled for in previous schools, but something with the potential for depth and durability. Amara fell into step beside him as he walked his bike toward the park exit. You know, she said thoughtfully, what you did this week matters. Not just standing up to Tyler, but the way you did it. What do you mean? You didn't try to beat him at his own game, intimidation, aggression, all that. You just claimed your right to exist fully. That's rarer than you might think. Marcus considered her words, recognizing their truth. My mom calls it dignified resistance. Standing your ground without losing yourself in the fight. I like that, Amara said. Dignified resistance. We could use more of that around here. They reached the intersection where their paths would diverge, pausing in the golden light of early evening. Around them, the town continued its weekend rhythms, families in the park, teenagers on skateboards, elderly couples walking well-groomed dogs. No longer an entirely foreign landscape to Marcus, but a place where he was beginning to recognize patterns, to find points of connection. See you Monday, Amara asked, her expression warm with something that might have been admiration. Definitely, Marcus confirmed. English class first period. Tyler will still be Tyler, she warned. One basketball game doesn't change everything. I know, Marcus acknowledged. But something has changed. As he rode home through streets that were gradually becoming familiar, Marcus reflected on the transformation that had occurred in a single week, not just in his external circumstances, but in his internal landscape. The constant vigilance he'd maintained since that first morning had not entirely disappeared, but alongside it had grown something new, a tentative sense of belonging, not as a visitor passing through, but as someone with the right to claim his space in this community. At a stoplight, Marcus pulled out his phone and found a text from his mother. Working late. Dinner in fridge. How was the park? He typed back simply. Better than expected. Making friends. Tell you about it later. The light changed, and Marcus pushed forward, his shadow stretching long across the pavement, taking up exactly the space it was meant to occupy. The road ahead still held challenges, Tyler's lingering hostility, the ongoing navigation of unfamiliar social territories, the inherent complexities of being the new kid in spaces with established histories. But for the first time since arriving, Marcus felt something beyond mere determination or resilience. He felt the possibility of thriving here, of building connections that might withstand whatever came next. Not because he had defeated those who sought to diminish him, but because he had remained steadfast in his refusal to be diminished. As Roosevelt Middle School came into view in the distance, the building no longer alien territory, but a space he had begun to map and claim, Marcus allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. The journey from outsider to belonging was never simple, rarely linear, and certainly not complete. But in standing his ground with dignity rather than aggression, in finding allies who recognized his worth, in refusing to accept the limitations others sought to impose, he had taken crucial steps forward. The sun dipped lower on the horizon as Marcus turned toward home, casting his shadow even longer across the pavement. It stretched before him like a path, not an easy one, perhaps, but one he was increasingly ready to walk with his head held high, claiming each step as his own.